The noose swayed in the hot Texas wind as Lorelei Oakes stood on the courthouse steps with her hands bound, watching the crowd gather like vultures circling prey. And she knew that speaking the truth about Mayor Harrington's cattle thefts had sealed her fate in ways she never imagined. It was June 1882, and Llano, Texas had become a town where justice bent to the will of whoever held the most gold and the fastest guns. The sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty Main Street as townspeople emerged from shops and saloons to witness what would become of the schoolteacher who dared challenge the established order. Mayor Conrad Harrington stood beside Sheriff Dalton, his thick mustache twitching with satisfaction as he surveyed the assembled crowd. Lorelei's dark hair clung to her neck in the oppressive heat, her calico dress stained with the dirt from 3 days in the town jail. She had committed no crime except speaking truth at the town meeting, presenting evidence that Harrington's men had been rebranding cattle from the smaller ranches and selling them as their own. The ledger she had found in the abandoned line shack told the whole story, but the mayor had powerful friends, and the law in Llano answered to money rather than morality. "Lorelei Oakes," the mayor announced, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "you have been found guilty of slander, disturbing the peace, and inciting disorder within our fair community. The penalty is banishment. You have until sunset to leave this town, and if you ever return, you will hang. Does anyone here stand to defend this woman?" The crowd remained silent. Lorelei searched the faces of people she had taught their letters to, children she had helped raise, families she had broken bread with. Fear had made cowards of them all. She lifted her chin, refusing to let them see her cry, even as her heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Everything she owned was in that tiny schoolhouse, every book and letter and memory. Her parents were buried in the cemetery on the hill. This was the only home she had ever known. "Then it is settled," Harrington continued, his smile cold as December frost. "Miss Oakes will be escorted to the edge of town property and released. If she is wise, she will keep walking and never look back." Sheriff Dalton cut the ropes binding her wrists, and Lorelei felt the blood rush back into her fingers with painful intensity. 2 deputies grabbed her arms and began marching her down the steps, through the parting crowd. People averted their eyes as she passed, shame and fear written across their faces. Only old Mrs. Henderson reached out to press something into Lorelei's hand, a small leather pouch that clinked with coins. The gesture was so quick the deputies did not notice, and then Lorelei was past her, being dragged toward the edge of town where the desert stretched endlessly toward the horizon. From the shadows of the livery stable, Isaac Grant watched the proceedings with growing anger tightening his jaw. He was a drifter, a cowboy who had been working at the Henderson Ranch for the past 3 months, and he had seen plenty of injustice in his 30 years riding across the frontier. But something about this struck him differently. He had been in the crowd at that town meeting when the young schoolteacher had stood up with her evidence, her voice steady and clear, as she laid out exactly how the mayor and his men were stealing from hard-working ranchers. Isaac had been impressed by her courage then, and watching her now being cast out for nothing more than telling the truth made his blood boil. The deputies shoved Lorelei past the last building and onto the road leading out of town. She stumbled but caught herself, refusing to fall. They threw her small carpetbag after her, its contents spilling into the dust. Then they turned and walked back toward town, laughing between themselves about the uppity schoolteacher getting what she deserved. Lorelei stood alone in the blazing sun, staring at the scattered remnants of her life in the dirt. She had 2 dresses, a few books, a photograph of her parents, and now the small pouch of coins Mrs. Henderson had slipped her. No horse, no food, no water. The nearest town was Silver Springs, 30 miles north through unforgiving desert country. She would die before she reached it on foot, but she would not give Harrington the satisfaction of begging. Lorelei bent to gather her belongings, shoving them back into the carpetbag with trembling hands. She would walk until she could not walk anymore, and if the desert claimed her, at least she would die free. The sound of hoofbeats made her look up. A rider was approaching from the direction of the Henderson ranch, leading a second horse. As he drew closer, Lorelei recognized him as one of the ranch hands, a tall man with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that touched his collar. She had seen him in town a few times, always quiet and watchful, never causing trouble. His eyes were the color of smoke, and there was something solid about him, like he was carved from the same stone as the mountains. Isaac Grant pulled his horse to a stop beside her and dismounted in one fluid motion. He was wearing worn leather chaps over denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a hat that had seen better days. A gun belt sat low on his hips, the holster tied down the way men wore them when they knew how to use what they carried. "Miss Oakes," he said, his voice rough from years of breathing dust and shouting over cattle. "Name is Isaac Grant. I work for the Hendersons, saw what happened back there, and it does not sit right with me. No one should be thrown out to die for telling the truth." Lorelei studied him warily, unsure what to make of this unexpected ally. "What do you want?" "To help you get somewhere safe," Isaac said simply. He gestured to the second horse, a sturdy bay mare. "That is Rosie. She is gentle and sure-footed. I will ride you out to Silver Springs or wherever you want to go. You should not be alone out here." "Why would you do that?" Lorelei asked, suspicion thick in her voice. "You do not know me. Helping me will make you an enemy of the mayor." Isaac's expression hardened. "Harrington is already stealing from my employer. I do not care what he thinks of me. As for why, let us just say I know what it is like to be punished for doing the right thing. No one helped me back then, but I can help you now." There was something in his eyes, an old pain that resonated with the fresh wound in Lorelei's own heart. She realized she had no choice but to trust him. Pride would not keep her alive in the desert. "Thank you," she said quietly, accepting his help up into Rosie's saddle. Her carpetbag was secured behind the saddle, and Isaac handed her a canteen of water. She drank gratefully, the lukewarm liquid soothing her parched throat. Isaac swung up onto his own horse, a tall buckskin gelding with intelligent eyes. "We should move. The sun will be setting in a few hours, and I want to put some distance between us and Lano before we make camp." They rode north, leaving Lano behind them. Lorelei looked back once at the town that had been her whole world, seeing the church steeple and the schoolhouse roof rising above the other buildings. Her throat tightened with unshed tears, but she forced herself to turn forward. That life was over. Whatever came next would have to be enough. Isaac set a steady pace, guiding them along a route that followed the creek bed when possible, providing some relief from the brutal sun. He did not try to make conversation, seeming to understand that Lorelei needed time to process what had happened. She was grateful for his silence, using the hours to grapple with the sudden upheaval of her existence. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Isaac led them off the main trail to a sheltered spot beneath a cluster of cottonwood trees. A small spring bubbled up from the rocks, creating a pool of clear water that attracted birds and small animals. It was an oasis in the harsh landscape. "We will camp here tonight," Isaac announced, dismounting and beginning to unsaddle his horse. "There is good water and grass for the horses. We should reach Silver Springs by midday tomorrow if we start early." Lorelei climbed down from Rosie, her legs stiff from the unaccustomed riding. She had ridden before, but not for this long, and she knew she would be sore tomorrow. Isaac noticed her awkward movements but said nothing, simply setting about making camp with practiced efficiency. He gathered firewood, hobbled the horses near the water, and unpacked supplies from his saddlebags. "I have beans and hardtack," he said, pulling out a battered coffee pot. "Not fancy, but it will fill your stomach." "It is more than I expected to have," Lorelei replied, settling onto a flat rock near where he was building the fire. "I thought I would be walking to my death." Isaac struck a match and lit the kindling, blowing gently until the flames caught. "Harrington is a coward and a thief. What he did to you is wrong, but men like him rarely face justice. They have too much power, too many people afraid to stand against them." "You are not afraid," Lorelei observed. He looked up at her, the firelight casting shadows across his angular face. "I have been running from one thing or another most of my life. Fear gets exhausting after a while. Sometimes you just have to decide what matters and make your stand, consequences be damned." "Is that what happened to you?" Lorelei asked gently. "You mentioned being punished for doing the right thing." Isaac was quiet for a long moment, measuring coffee grounds into the pot and setting it near the flames. "5 years ago, I was working on a ranch in Colorado. The owner was beating one of the Mexican workers nearly to death over a missing saddle that turned up later in the barn. I stepped in, stopped it. The owner was a big man in the territory, had friends in Denver. I was blacklisted, could not find work anywhere in Colorado. Had to keep moving, always looking over my shoulder. Eventually made my way down here to Texas, and the Hendersons were kind enough to give me a chance despite having no references." "I am sorry," Lorelei said softly. "That was brave, what you did." He shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "It was just human decency. Same as what you did, speaking up about the cattle thefts. You knew it would cost you, but you did it anyway. That takes courage." Lorelei felt tears prick her eyes again. No one in Llano had acknowledged the sacrifice she had made. They had all been too busy protecting themselves to see that she had been trying to protect them too. Hearing this stranger recognize what it had cost her broke something loose inside her chest. "I do not feel brave," she whispered. "I feel scared and alone and angry. I lost everything today. My home, my students, my purpose. I have nowhere to go and no idea what I will do when we reach Silver Springs." Isaac handed her a tin cup of coffee, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. "You will figure it out. Women like you, smart and strong and unwilling to bend, they always land on their feet eventually. It might take time, but you will find your way." She cradled the cup in her hands, letting the warmth seep into her palms. "What makes you think I am strong? You barely know me." "I saw you stand up to that whole town," Isaac said, spooning beans into 2 tin plates. "I saw you keep your head high when they banished you, even though you were terrified. I have known plenty of people who would have broken under that kind of pressure, but you did not. That is strength." They ate in companionable silence, the desert coming alive with night sounds around them. Coyotes yipped in the distance, and an owl called from the cottonwoods. The stars emerged one by one, countless pinpoints of light in the vast darkness. Lorelei had never spent a night outside the protection of walls and a roof, and she found it both frightening and strangely beautiful. Isaac spread his bedroll on one side of the fire and gave Lorelei his spare blanket, fashioning her a space on the opposite side. "Get some rest," he told her. "I will keep watch for a while, make sure nothing unwelcome wanders into camp." Lorelei lay down, using her carpetbag as a pillow, and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was elusive. Her mind kept replaying the day's events, searching for things she could have done differently, words she could have said to change the outcome. But she knew in her heart that there was no reasoning with men like Harrington. Power corrupted, and absolute power corrupted absolutely. Isaac. She called softly across the fire. Yes, thank you for this, for helping me when no one else would. I will never forget your kindness. She could see him nod in the firelight. Try to sleep, Lorelei. Tomorrow is a new day. Hearing him use her first name sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. There was something comforting about this quiet cowboy who had ridden to her rescue without expecting anything in return. In a world that had just proven itself cruel and unjust, Isaac Grant was a reminder that good people still existed. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her, and Lorelei drifted into an uneasy sleep filled with dreams of dusty streets and accusing faces. She woke once in the deep hours of night to find Isaac adding wood to the fire, his profile sharp against the flames. Something about his presence made her feel safe, and she fell back asleep more peacefully than before. Dawn broke cool and clear, the desert air crisp before the sun rose high enough to bake the earth. Isaac had already rekindled the fire and was boiling water for coffee when Lorelei stirred. Every muscle in her body ached from yesterday's ride, but she forced herself upright, determined not to slow them down. "Morning," Isaac greeted her, handing over a cup of coffee and some hardtack. "How are you feeling?" "Sore," Lorelei admitted, "but alive. That is more than I expected yesterday." They broke camp efficiently, Isaac teaching Lorelei how to properly secure her bedroll behind the saddle. His hands were patient as he showed her the knots, his voice calm and instructive. She found herself studying him in the morning light, noticing details she had missed before. He had a scar along his jaw, and his hands were calloused from years of hard work. There was a quiet competence about him that she found deeply attractive, though she pushed the thought away as inappropriate given her circumstances. They rode north again, the sun climbing steadily into a cloudless sky. The landscape was harsh and beautiful, all red rock and stubborn vegetation clinging to life in impossible places. Isaac pointed out landmarks and wildlife, telling her stories about his years wandering the West. He had worked ranches from Montana to Arizona, seen mining camps and cattle drives, witnessed the slow creep of civilization into wild places. "You ever want to settle somewhere?" Lorelei asked as they paused to water the horses at a creek. "Find a place to call home." Isaac considered the question, his gaze distant. "Sometimes, but I am not sure I know how anymore. I have been moving for so long that staying still feels dangerous, like I am waiting for the other boot to drop." "I understand that," Lorelei said, "though my experience is the opposite. I stayed in one place my whole life, and look where it got me. Maybe there is something to be said for keeping moving, staying ahead of the trouble." "Maybe," Isaac agreed, but he did not sound convinced. "Or maybe we both need to find a balance, somewhere between running and standing still." They rode on, the conversation drifting to lighter topics. Isaac made Lorelei laugh with stories about stubborn cattle and ornery horses, and she found herself relaxing in his presence. There was no pretense with him, no games or hidden agendas. He was exactly who he appeared to be, a decent man trying to do right in a complicated world. By noon, Silver Springs appeared on the horizon, a collection of buildings clustered around a genuine spring that gave the town its name. It was larger than Llano, with more businesses and a railroad depot that connected it to the wider world. Lorelei felt her anxiety rise as they approached. She had no plan, no contacts here, no idea how she would survive. Isaac seemed to sense her apprehension. "The hotel in Silver Springs is run by a widow named Clara Bennett. She is a good woman, fair and honest. I have stayed there before when bringing cattle to the railhead. She might have worked for you, or at least be able to point you toward opportunities." "How will I pay for a room until I find work?" Lorelei asked, the practical concerns of survival pressing in on her. "I will cover it for a few nights," Isaac said firmly. "Give you time to get your bearings and find something." "I cannot ask you to do that," Lorelei protested. "You have already done so much. You did not ask. I am offering." His tone left no room for argument. "Besides, I am planning to stay in town for a few days anyway. The Hendersons asked me to check on a horse shipment coming in on the train. Consider it part of the job." Lorelei knew he was stretching the truth for her benefit, but she was too grateful to argue further. They rode into Silver Springs as the town buzzed with midday activity. Cowboys lounged outside the saloon, women shopped at the general store, and a steam engine sat at the depot, workers loading freight into boxcars. The hotel was a two-story wooden building with a wide porch and rocking chairs facing the main street. Isaac tied the horses to the rail and helped Lorelei down from her saddle, his hand steady on her waist. For a moment, they stood close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, and something passed between them, an awareness that had been building since they met. Isaac cleared his throat and stepped back, breaking the moment. "Let me do the talking with Clara. She knows me." Inside, the hotel was clean and well-maintained, with lace curtains on the windows and a vase of wildflowers on the front desk. A woman in her 50s emerged from the back room, her face lighting up when she saw Isaac. "Isaac Grant, as I live and breathe," Clara Bennett exclaimed, coming around the desk to clasp his hands. "I have not seen you since last fall. How have you been?" "Well enough, Clara," Isaac replied with genuine warmth. "I am working for the Hendersons down in Lano. This is Miss Lorelei Oakes. She needs a room for a few days, maybe longer depending on how things shake out." Clara turned her sharp eyes on Lorelei, taking in her dusty clothes and tired face. "Running from something or running to something, dear. Running from injustice," Lorelei said honestly. "I spoke out against corruption in Lano and was banished for it. Isaac was kind enough to help me reach Silver Springs safely." "Corruption in Lano," Clara repeated, nodding knowingly. "That would be Mayor Harrington and his cattle schemes, I would wager. Word has been spreading about that for months. Brave of you to speak up, foolish perhaps, but brave. Isaac has always had a soft spot for lost causes, so I am not surprised he helped you." Isaac looked uncomfortable but did not deny it. Clara laughed and patted his arm affectionately before turning back to Lorelei. "I have a room available on the second floor, clean linens and a real bed. Meals are included if you take your breakfast and supper in the dining room. As for payment, we can discuss that. I am always looking for help around the hotel if you are willing to work." "I am willing to do whatever is needed," Lorelei said quickly. "I was a schoolteacher, so I can read and write and do sums. I can clean and cook and mend, whatever you need." Clara smiled warmly. "A schoolteacher. That is perfect. My handwriting is terrible, and I have been falling behind on my correspondence and bookkeeping. If you can help me get organized, we can work out a fair arrangement. Come, let me show you to your room and then you can get cleaned up. You look like you have been through the wars." Isaac caught Lorelei's eye as Clara led her toward the stairs. "I will be around for a few days," he said. "If you need anything, just ask Clara where to find me." "Thank you, Isaac," Lorelei said, meaning it with her whole heart. "For everything." He nodded, settling his hat more firmly on his head. It was the right thing to do. After he left, Clara led Lorelei up to a pleasant room with a window overlooking the main street. There was a bed with a quilt, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, and a small dresser. It was simple but comfortable, infinitely better than sleeping on the ground. "Take some time to rest," Clara told her. "There is hot water in the kitchen if you want a proper wash. We will talk about the work arrangement over supper tonight." Left alone, Lorelei sank onto the bed and finally let herself cry. The tears came hard and fast, releasing all the fear and grief and anger she had been holding back. She cried for her lost home, for her students who would never understand why she left, for the parents who had raised her to stand up for what was right even when it cost everything. But underneath the pain, there was also relief. She was alive. She was safe. And she had met a man who restored her faith that goodness still existed in the world. Over the next few days, Lorelei settled into a routine at the hotel. She spent her mornings helping Clara with correspondence and bookkeeping, organizing years of receipts and records into a system that made sense. Clara was delighted with her efficiency and began consulting her on other business matters. In the afternoons, Lorelei helped with cleaning and laundry, work that was physically harder than teaching but also strangely satisfying. Isaac appeared each morning for breakfast, sitting at the same table in the dining room and exchanging quiet conversation with Lorelei as she served coffee. He had checked on the horse shipment as planned, but he kept finding excuses to stay in Silver Springs. He needed supplies. His horse needed new shoes. He was waiting for a letter from the Hendersons with further instructions. Lorelei suspected he was staying because of her, and the thought made her heart beat faster. On the fourth evening, Isaac found her on the hotel porch after supper, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. He settled into the rocking chair beside her, his long legs stretched out in front of him. "You are looking better," he observed. "More rested." "I feel better," Lorelei admitted. "Clara has been wonderful and the work keeps my mind occupied. I am starting to think I might actually survive this." "More than survive," Isaac said. "Clara told me she is considering making you a full partner in the hotel business. Says you have a head for numbers and people trust you." Lorelei looked at him in surprise. "She said that." "She did. Seems you have a talent for landing on your feet after all." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the evening sounds of the town settling around them. Finally, Isaac spoke again, his voice lower and more hesitant. "I need to head back to the Henderson ranch tomorrow. They are starting the fall gather, and I promised I would be back to help. But I was wondering if you do not mind if I could write to you. Stay in touch, see how you are doing." Lorelei's heart leaped at the question, but she kept her voice steady. "I would like that very much. I have been hoping you would not just disappear without a word." Isaac turned to look at her, his gray eyes serious. "Lorelei, I need you to know something. These past few days, getting to know you, seeing your strength and your kindness despite everything you have been through, it has meant something to me. I have spent 5 years keeping people at arm's length, not letting anyone get close because I was always planning my next move. But with you, it is different. I find myself wanting to stay, wanting to see where this could go." Lorelei's breath caught in her throat. She had been trying not to acknowledge her growing feelings for Isaac, telling herself it was just gratitude for his help. But hearing him voice similar feelings gave her permission to admit the truth. "I feel the same way," she confessed. "I know the timing is terrible and my life is still such a mess, but there is something between us. Something real." Isaac reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers warm against hers. "Then let us not waste it. I will come back to Silver Springs as often as I can. We will take this slow, get to know each other properly. And when the time is right, we will figure out what comes next. Together." "Together," Lorelei repeated, the word feeling like a promise. She squeezed his hand, marveling at how quickly her world had shifted. A week ago, she had lost everything. Now, sitting here with Isaac's hand in hers, she felt like she was gaining something infinitely more valuable. Isaac left the next morning, but not before kissing Lorelei's hand in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and utterly charming. She watched him ride south toward Leno, her heart full of a cautious hope she had not expected to feel again so soon. True to his word, Isaac returned to Silver Springs 2 weeks later, dusty and tired from the cattle gather, but with a smile that lit up his whole face when he saw Lorelei. They spent the evening walking through town, talking about everything and nothing, discovering shared values and dreams. Isaac told her about his childhood in Missouri, how he had left home at 16 to escape his father's drunken rages. Lorelei shared memories of her parents, both of whom had died from fever when she was 18, leaving her alone but determined to honor their legacy by teaching. The visits became regular, Isaac finding reasons to come to Silver Springs every few weeks. Sometimes it was legitimate ranch business. Other times he simply needed to see Lorelei, and the Hendersons graciously gave him the time. Clara watched the romance develop with a matchmaker's satisfaction, always making sure Isaac had the best room and the finest meals when he stayed at the hotel. As summer turned to fall, Lorelei's new life took solid shape. Clara officially made her a junior partner in the hotel, giving her a stake in the business and a secure future. Lorelei's natural intelligence and her teaching experience served her well in the hospitality industry. And soon, she was suggesting improvements that increased both the hotel's reputation and its profits. But the happiest moments were always when Isaac arrived, his tall figure appearing in the doorway of the hotel like an answered prayer. They would talk for hours, sometimes sitting on the porch, other times walking out to the spring that gave the town its name. Isaac told her stories about his cowboy life, the beauty of watching dawn break over the prairie during a cattle drive, the satisfaction of honest work well done. Lorelei shared her dreams of someday opening a school again, teaching children who might not otherwise have access to education. One evening in late October, as they sat by the spring with the stars emerging overhead, Isaac turned serious. "Lorelei, there is something I need to tell you. The Hendersons have decided to retire. They are selling the ranch, and the new owner is bringing his own crew. I will be out of work by the end of November." Lorelei's heart sank. "What will you do? Will you have to leave the area?" "That depends," Isaac said, his eyes searching her face. "I have been thinking a lot about what I want from life, and I keep coming back to the same conclusion. I am tired of wandering, Lorelei. I am tired of not having roots or a place to call home. I want to settle down, build something lasting, and I want to do it with you if you will have me." Lorelei's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of joy. "Are you asking what I think you are asking?" Isaac pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple gold band with a small garnet stone. "It is not much," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But it was my grandmother's ring, the only thing I have from my family that means anything. Lorelei Oakes, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that you were right to believe in second chances?" "Yes," Lorelei whispered, then louder. "Yes, Isaac Grant, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he kissed her for the first time, a kiss that was gentle and passionate and full of promise. Lorelei melted into his embrace, feeling like she had finally come home after a long journey through the wilderness. They were married in Silver Springs on a crisp December morning, with Clara and the hotel staff as witnesses. The town preacher performed the ceremony in the small church, and though it was simple, Lorelei had never felt more cherished. She wore a new dress that Clara had helped her make, a soft blue wool that brought out the color of her eyes. Isaac wore his Sunday best, looking handsome and nervous as he said his vows. After the ceremony, Clara hosted a wedding dinner at the hotel, inviting half the town to celebrate. It was a joyous occasion, full of good food and laughter and well wishes. Lorelei looked around at the faces of her new community, people who had accepted her without judgment and felt profound gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. That night, in the privacy of the hotel's best room that Clara had prepared specially for them, Isaac held Lorelei close and whispered his dreams for their future. He had saved enough money to buy a small ranch outside of Silver Springs, he told her. Nothing grand, just a modest spread with good water and grazing land. They could raise horses and cattle, build a life together. And maybe, if she still wanted, she could teach the children of the neighboring ranches, providing education to kids who would otherwise go without. "It sounds perfect," Lorelei murmured against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady and strong beneath her ear. "As long as we are together, anywhere will feel like home." Isaac kissed the top of her head. "I never thought I would find someone like you. Someone who sees the best in people even after they have shown you the worst. You make me want to be a better man, Lorelei." "You are already the best man I know," she told him honestly. "You risked everything to help a stranger, and you have shown me that kindness and integrity still matter in this world. I am the lucky one, Isaac." They made love for the first time that night, a tender exploration that deepened their connection beyond words. Lorelei had been nervous, but Isaac was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt completely at peace for the first time since that terrible day in Llano when her old life had ended. As winter settled over Texas, Isaac and Lorelei began building their ranch. The property was 10 miles outside Silver Springs, a beautiful piece of land with a creek running through it and views of the distant hills. The house was small but solid, needing some repairs but nothing they could not handle together. They spent weeks fixing the roof, patching walls, and making the place comfortable. Clara donated furniture and supplies from the hotel, and other townspeople contributed what they could, welcoming the newlyweds into the community. Isaac proved to be an excellent rancher, using everything he had learned during his years of wandering to build a successful operation. He bought a small herd of cattle and some brood mares, planning to breed horses for sale. Lorelei helped with the animals and managed the household, but she also began teaching again. Word spread that the new Mrs. Grant had been a schoolteacher, and soon parents were bringing their children to the ranch for lessons. Lorelei taught them in the front room of the house, using whatever materials she could gather, and refused to charge families who could not afford to pay. Spring brought new life to the ranch in more ways than one. The mares foaled, producing beautiful colts that would fetch good prices when old enough to sell. The cattle thrived on the good grass, and Lorelei discovered she was pregnant, carrying the child they had both hoped for. Isaac was overjoyed at the news, his hands gentle as he placed them on her still flat stomach. "A baby," he said in wonder. "We are going to have a baby. Are you scared?" Lorelei asked, feeling her own mixture of excitement and terror. "Terrified," Isaac admitted, "but also happier than I have ever been. We are going to be good parents, Lorelei. We will give this child all the love and stability neither of us had growing up." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Lorelei continued teaching until she became too uncomfortable to stand for long periods. The ranch women rallied around her, sharing advice and bringing gifts for the baby. Clara came out from Silver Springs regularly, fussing over Lorelei like a mother hen and making sure she had everything she needed. In late September, with the autumn heat just beginning to ease, Lorelei went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Isaac paced the floor while Clara and the midwife attended to Lorelei, feeling helpless and frightened by his wife's pain. But when he finally heard the baby's first cry, he rushed into the bedroom to find Lorelei exhausted but smiling, cradling a tiny infant against her chest. "It is a boy," the midwife announced. "A strong, healthy boy." Isaac approached the bed reverently, looking down at his son with tears streaming down his face. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was wailing lustily, his small face scrunched up in protest at being thrust into the bright, cold world. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered, reaching out to touch one tiny fist. The baby's fingers immediately closed around his father's calloused finger, and Isaac felt his heart expand with a love so fierce it was almost painful. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking, James," Lorelei said softly. "After your grandfather, the one who gave you his ring." Isaac had told her once about his grandfather, a kind man who had tried to shield him from his father's violence. Hearing Lorelei suggest naming their son after him touched something deep inside Isaac's heart. "James Grant," he said, testing the sound of it. "It is a good, strong name. Yes, let us call him James." Parenthood transformed them both. Isaac discovered reserves of patience he never knew he possessed, walking the floor with a colicky baby in the small hours of the morning, singing old trail songs in his rough voice, until James finally settled. Lorelei marveled at the depth of her love for this small person who depended entirely on her, and she understood in a new way why her own parents had worked so hard to give her a good life. The ranch continued to prosper. Isaac's horse breeding program gained a reputation for quality, and buyers came from as far as Dallas to purchase his stock. Lorelei's informal school grew until they had to add a small building behind the house to accommodate all the students. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and history, preparing children for lives beyond the ranch lands. 2 years after James was born, Lorelei gave birth to a daughter they named Abigail, and 3 years after that, another son they called Thomas. The house was full of noise and laughter, children's voices mixing with animal sounds from the barns and corrals. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely wonderful. As the children grew, Isaac taught them about ranching and horsemanship, passing on skills he had learned over decades on the trail. James, the eldest, showed a particular talent for working with horses, able to calm skittish animals with his gentle touch. Abigail was fearless, climbing trees and racing her brothers across the pastures. Thomas, the youngest, had his mother's love of books and often sat reading in the shade while his siblings played. On a warm evening in May, 10 years after that fateful day in Leno, Isaac and Lorelei sat on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching their children play in the yard. James, now 9, was teaching Abigail how to rope a fence post. Thomas, age 4, was supposedly helping but mostly getting in the way. "Did you ever imagine our lives would turn out like this?" Lorelei asked, leaning against Isaac's shoulder. "Never," Isaac admitted. "When I rode into Leno that morning, I was just planning to do a job and move on, same as always. Then I saw you standing up to that crowd and something shifted inside me. I could not just walk away." "I am grateful you did not," Lorelei said. "That was the worst day of my life, but it led to all of this. To you, to our children, to a life I love more than I ever loved teaching in that little schoolhouse." Isaac turned to kiss her temple. "You are still teaching. You have more than 20 students now, and you are giving them opportunities they would never have otherwise. You just have a bigger impact now because you are not limited by one small town's narrow vision." "Maybe," Lorelei agreed, "but I could not do any of it without you." "We built this together, Isaac. Our partnership is the foundation of everything good in my life." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. The ranch spread out around them, a testament to years of hard work and shared dreams. Cattle grazed in the far pasture, horses moved in the corrals, and their children's laughter rang out clear and bright in the evening air. "James," Lorelei called out. "Abigail, Thomas, time to come in for supper." The children came running, all three of them breathless and grass-stained and happy. They piled into the house, talking over each other about their day's adventures. Isaac helped the boys wash up while Lorelei set the table with Abigail's assistance, and soon the family was gathered around the big kitchen table Isaac had built with his own hands. As they said grace before the meal, Lorelei looked at each beloved face around the table. Her husband, still handsome at 40 with silver threading through his dark hair. James, growing tall and serious, so much like his father. Abigail, all wild curls and bright mischief. Thomas, thoughtful and kind, already showing signs of the man he would become. This was her family, her purpose, her joy. After supper, while Isaac read to the younger children, Lorelei stepped outside into the gathering dusk. She looked toward the south, in the direction of Lano, the town that had cast her out for speaking truth. She wondered sometimes what had become of the people there, whether Mayor Harrington still ruled with an iron fist, or whether someone else had eventually found the courage to stand against him. But those thoughts held no bitterness anymore. That painful chapter had been necessary to bring her to this better place. She had learned that sometimes losing everything was the only way to find what truly mattered. Home was not a building or a town. Home was the people you loved and who loved you back without conditions or limits. Isaac came out to join her, slipping an arm around her waist. "The kids are in bed." "Well, mostly. Thomas is still negotiating for one more story." Lorelei laughed. "He gets that from you, you know. You could always talk me into one more cup of coffee, one more walk under the stars." "Guilty as charged," Isaac admitted with a grin. "But you have never seemed to mind much." "I have never minded at all," Lorelei confirmed, rising on her toes to kiss him. Even after 10 years of marriage, his kiss still made her heart race. They stood together under the emerging stars, the same stars that had watched over them that first night in the desert when Lorelei's future had seemed so uncertain. She thought about the woman she had been then, frightened and alone, facing exile from everything she knew. That woman would scarcely believe what her life had become, how completely her story had rewritten itself. "What are you thinking?" Isaac asked, sensing the shift in her mood. "That I would do it all again," Lorelei said quietly. "All the pain, all the fear, all the uncertainty. I would do it again in a heartbeat because it brought me here to this life with you. You saved me, Isaac, in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Isaac corrected gently. "I was just existing before you, Lorelei, moving from place to place without purpose or hope. You gave me a reason to stop running, to believe that I deserved happiness and stability. We saved each other, and then we built something beautiful together." The night deepened around them, full of possibility and promise. Inside the house, their children slept safely in their beds, dreaming whatever dreams children dream. The ranch was quiet except for the sounds of animals settling for the night, and the gentle whisper of wind through the trees Isaac had planted when they first moved here. Years continued to pass, each one adding layers to the life Isaac and Lorelei had built. The ranch expanded as they purchased adjoining land, increasing their cattle herd and horse breeding operation. James grew into a capable young man who took on more responsibility, eventually running much of the day-to-day ranch operations. Abigail surprised them all by developing a talent for veterinary work, learning to care for sick and injured animals with skill and compassion. Thomas became a teacher himself, helping his mother with the school and showing a gift for making complex subjects understandable to young minds. Lorelei's school had grown into an officially recognized institution, with a proper schoolhouse built on ranch property and students coming from miles around. She still refused to charge families who could not afford tuition. and Isaac supported her fully in this, believing that education should be accessible to all children regardless of their parents' financial circumstances. One autumn day, when Isaac was 50 and Lorelei was 44, a stranger rode up to the ranch asking for directions. Isaac, who was mending a fence near the road, provided the information and was about to return to his work when the man spoke again. "Pardon me, but are you Isaac Grant?" "The one who married the schoolteacher from Lano." Isaac straightened, immediately wary. "I am. What is your business with that?" The stranger dismounted and extended his hand. "My name is Robert Henderson, son of the folks you used to work for. I live in Lano now, running a ranch there. I wanted to find you and Mrs. Grant to tell you something that happened." Isaac shook the offered hand cautiously. "What happened?" "Mayor Harrington was finally brought to justice 2 years ago," Robert said. "A Texas Ranger came through investigating cattle theft, and enough people finally found the courage to testify. Turned out your wife had documented everything perfectly in that ledger she found. Harrington is serving 10 years in the state prison. The town has been trying to track down Mrs. Grant ever since, wanting to apologize and ask her to come back." Isaac felt a complicated rush of emotions. That is good news about Harrington facing consequences, but Lorelei has no interest in returning to Lano. She has built a good life here and she is happy. "I understand," Robert said. "But they wanted you both to know that they were wrong to banish her, that she was right all along, and that they are sorry. I volunteered to try to find you and deliver the message. My parents always spoke highly of you both and felt terrible about what happened." "I appreciate you making the trip," Isaac said, meaning it. "It will matter to Lorelei to know that the truth came out eventually. Would you like to come up to the house and tell her yourself? She should hear it from you." Robert agreed, and they rode together to the house where Lorelei was working with 2 students on their arithmetic. She looked up when Isaac entered with a stranger, and he saw the questions in her eyes. After Robert had explained his mission and passed along the town's apologies, Lorelei was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, and there was no trace of bitterness in her expression. "Thank you for bringing me this news," she told Robert. "And please tell anyone in Lano who asks that I forgive them. I was angry for a long time, but I have learned that carrying anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I have a wonderful life here with my husband and children, and I would not trade it for anything. What happened in Lano brought me to where I am supposed to be." Robert stayed for supper, meeting the Grant children and hearing about the thriving ranch and school. Before he left the next morning, he shook Isaac's hand again. "You are a lucky man, Isaac Grant. Your wife is as gracious as she is intelligent. Lano's loss was definitely Silver Spring's gain." After Robert departed, Isaac found Lorelei sitting on the porch, looking thoughtful. He settled beside her, taking her hand in his. "How do you feel?" he asked. "About the news?" "Relieved," Lorelei said honestly. "Not for myself, because that part of my life is over and done, but relieved that the people Harrington was stealing from finally got justice. And I am glad I was right not to let bitterness consume me. Forgiveness is not about excusing what they did. It is about not letting their wrong choices continue to poison my life." "You are a remarkable woman," Isaac said with deep admiration. "I knew it the first time I saw you standing on those courthouse steps with your head held high." "And you are a remarkable man for seeing something worth saving in that frightened schoolteacher," Lorelei countered, squeezing his hand. "We have been good for each other, Isaac." "The best," he agreed, pulling her close. More years rolled by, bringing the changes that time always brings. James married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring spread, and they built a house on Grant land, continuing the family legacy. Abigail went to study veterinary medicine formally in Dallas, returning as one of the few female veterinarians in Texas, and setting up a practice that served the entire region. Thomas married his childhood sweetheart and took over running the school when Lorelei decided it was time to step back from daily teaching. Isaac and Lorelei became grandparents, first to James' twin boys, then to more grandchildren from each of their children. The ranch house was frequently filled with multiple generations, noisy family dinners that reminded Lorelei of the community she had always dreamed of building. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Lorelei with a trip to San Antonio, the two of them leaving the ranch in James' capable hands for a week of just being together. They stayed in a fine hotel, ate in nice restaurants, and walked along the river in the evenings, remembering what it felt like to be young and falling in love. "Do you have any regrets?" Isaac asked one evening as they watched the sun set over the city. Lorelei considered the question seriously. "I regret that my parents did not live to see the life I built, to meet you and the children. I regret that fear made cowards of people I once respected in Llano. But do I regret the path my life took? Never. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of fear and uncertainty was worth it because it led me to you and to the family we created together." "I feel the same way," Isaac said. "I spent so many years running from my past, convinced I did not deserve happiness or stability. Then I met you, and you showed me that the past does not have to define the future. We get to choose who we become, Lorelei, and I chose to become the kind of man worthy of your love." "You were always worthy," Lorelei told him firmly. "You just had to learn to see it in yourself." They returned to the ranch refreshed and more in love than ever, ready to embrace the next chapter of their lives. Isaac was nearing 60 now, his hair completely silver, but he was still strong and active, working alongside his sons and grandsons to manage the expanding ranch operations. Lorelei, in her mid-50s, had a few more lines around her eyes, but retained the grace and intelligence that had first caught Isaac's attention. The school Thomas ran had become a full academy, teaching children from primary years through preparation for university. Several of Lorelei's former students had gone on to become teachers themselves, spreading education throughout rural Texas. It was a legacy Lorelei was deeply proud of, proof that speaking truth to power all those years ago had ultimately created ripples of positive change far beyond what she could have imagined. One summer evening, with the whole family gathered for a celebration of Isaac's 60th birthday, he stood to make a toast. His children, their spouses, and 10 grandchildren ranging from infants to teenagers gathered around him, their faces attentive and loving. "60 years, Isaac began, his voice still strong despite his age. "I have lived 60 years, and I can honestly say that the best of them began 26 years ago when I saw a brave woman standing up to injustice in Llano. I could have ridden away that day. I had no obligation to help, no connection to her, but something told me that this woman was important, that she mattered. That impulse to help changed my entire life." He looked at Lorelei, his eyes soft with emotion. "You gave me everything I never knew I needed: a home, a family, a purpose. You took a restless cowboy who had been running his whole life and showed him that putting down roots could be the greatest adventure of all. I love you, Lorelei Grant, more today than I did yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." There was not a dry eye in the room as the family toasted Isaac's health and happiness. Lorelei rose to kiss her husband, not caring that their children and grandchildren were watching. Let them see what real love looked like, love that endured through decades and challenges, love that grew stronger with time rather than fading. Late that night, After everyone had gone home or gone to bed, Isaac and Lorelei sat on their porch as they had done countless times over the years. The stars were brilliant overhead, the same stars that had watched over them through every season of their lives together. "You remember that first night in the desert?" Lorelei asked. "When you made camp by the cottonwood trees and gave me your spare blanket?" "I remember everything about our early days," Isaac said. "I remember being terrified that you would die in the desert before I could get you to safety. I remember thinking you were the bravest person I had ever met. I remember the exact moment I realized I was falling in love with you." "When was that?" Lorelei asked curiously. "The second morning when we were riding to Silver Springs," Isaac said. "You were so sore from the previous day's ride that you could barely sit in the saddle, but you never complained once. You just kept going with this determined set to your jaw. And when I made a joke to try to cheer you up, you laughed. This genuine, beautiful laugh despite everything you had just been through. That is when I knew you were someone special, someone I could not let slip away." Lorelei smiled at the memory. "I fell in love with you in stages. First when you appeared with that spare horse, offering help when everyone else had abandoned me. Then more when you were so patient and kind during the ride. But I knew for certain that I loved you the night you proposed. You were so nervous, this strong, capable man reduced to stammering as you asked me to marry you. It was endearing and perfect and everything I did not know I wanted." They sat holding hands, two people who had found each other against impossible odds and built something lasting and true. The ranch was quiet around them, a testament to their partnership and shared vision. In the distance, a coyote howled at the moon, and Isaac remembered the first time he had heard that sound with Lorelei beside him, when her future had been uncertain and frightening. How far they had come since that desperate night in the desert. How much they had built together, not just the physical ranch and school, but a family bound by love and respect, a community that valued justice and education, a legacy that would outlive them both. As they finally went inside to bed, walking through the house they had turned into a home, Lorelei felt a profound sense of peace. She thought about the woman she had been at 24, standing on those courthouse steps facing banishment. That woman would be proud of who she had become, proud of the courage it took to keep going when everything seemed lost. And she thought about Isaac, the cowboy who had ridden to her rescue and stolen her heart in the process. He had given her freedom, yes, but more than that, he had given her a partnership built on equality and mutual respect. They had faced everything life threw at them side by side, neither one more important than the other, both essential to their shared success. Years continued their inevitable march, bringing both joy and sorrow. Clara Bennett passed away peacefully in her sleep at 83, leaving the Silver Springs Hotel to her niece, but remembered fondly by everyone who had known her. Lorelei mourned the woman who had given her a chance when she had nothing, who had welcomed her without judgment and helped her build a new life. The Grant Ranch continued to thrive into the new century, adapting to changing times while maintaining its core values. James and his sons proved to be innovative ranchers, incorporating new breeding techniques and business practices. Abigail's veterinary practice expanded to include a teaching component, training the next generation of animal doctors. Thomas's Academy became one of the most respected rural schools in Texas, sending students on to universities and professional careers. Isaac and Lorelei aged gracefully together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, they renewed their vows in a ceremony that had everyone in tears. Isaac's hands trembled slightly as he slipped the ring onto Lorelei's finger once more, the same ring he had given her 4 decades earlier. Lorelei's hair was silver now, and Isaac walked with a slight limp from an old injury. But when they looked at each other, they saw the young people they had been, falling in love in the shadow of injustice and fear. 40 years ago, I asked you to take a chance on a drifting cowboy with nothing to offer but his heart, Isaac said during the ceremony. You said yes, and you have spent 4 decades proving that it was the best decision either of us ever made. You are my partner, my best friend, my reason for everything good in my life. I would marry you again every single day if I could. Lorelei's response was equally heartfelt. You rode into my darkest hour and offered me hope when I had none. You showed me that sometimes the worst thing that happens to us is actually the beginning of something better. You are the love of my life, Isaac Grant, and I am grateful for every moment we have shared. The celebration lasted long into the night, with music and dancing and storytelling. The grandchildren begged for tales of how their grandparents met, and Isaac and Lorelei obliged, telling the story of Lano and Banishment, and a cowboy who chose to help when no one else would. The children listened with wide eyes, finding it hard to imagine their proper, dignified grandmother as a young woman facing exile, or their steady grandfather as a rootless drifter. But those young people had existed, and their choices had created ripples that extended far beyond their individual lives. Every student who attended the academy, every animal Abigail saved, every ethical business decision James made, every act of kindness and justice in their extended family, it all traced back to that moment when Isaac decided that right mattered more than convenience, and Lorelei chose to forgive rather than grow bitter. As Isaac and Lorelei entered their 70s, they began to slow down, spending more time in rocking chairs on the porch and less time actively working the ranch. But their minds remained sharp, and they delighted in their growing family. Great-grandchildren climbed into their laps to hear stories, learning lessons about courage and integrity, and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it costs you everything. One spring morning, when the wildflowers were blooming across the pastures and the new foals were testing their legs in the corrals, Isaac woke to find Lorelei already up and sitting by the window, watching the sunrise. Could not sleep. He asked, joining her and wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. I slept, Lorelei assured him. I just wanted to watch the day begin. I have been thinking about how blessed we have been, Isaac. How many people get to build the kind of life we have? How many people find the kind of love we share? Not enough, Isaac said, settling into the chair beside her. The world would be a better place if everyone had what we have. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not stopped that day? Lorelei asked. If you had just kept riding and left me to face the desert alone? No, Isaac said firmly, because I could not have lived with myself if I had done that. You needed help, and I had the means to provide it. Everything else followed naturally from that single choice. A single choice that changed everything, Lorelei mused. It is humbling to think about how one moment can alter the entire trajectory of multiple lives. If you had ridden past, I likely would have died in that desert. Our children would never have been born. The school would not exist. All the lives we have touched would have taken different paths. But I did not ride past, Isaac reminded her. I stopped and I helped and I fell in love, and we built something beautiful together, something that will outlast us both. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher, painting the ranch in shades of gold and green. This land, this life, this love, it was their legacy, the answer to that long-ago injustice in Lano. They had taken suffering and transformed it into something meaningful and good. Isaac and Lorelei lived into their late 70s, enjoying many more years of family, laughter, and love. When Isaac finally passed away peacefully in his sleep at 78, Lorelei mourned him deeply, but without regret. They had been given more time together than many couples dream of, and they had used every moment well. She lived 2 more years after Isaac's death, staying active and engaged with her family until the very end. On a warm autumn evening, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, Lorelei Grant closed her eyes for the last time, a smile on her lips as if she were greeting someone beloved who had been waiting for her. At her funeral, Thomas read a letter she had written to be opened after her death. In it, she thanked each of her children for the joy they had brought to her life. She urged her grandchildren and great-grandchildren to always stand up for justice, even when it was difficult, even when it cost them dearly. She spoke of Isaac with profound love and gratitude, expressing her belief that they would be together again. But the part of the letter that resonated most deeply came at the end. "I want you all to know that my life, despite its difficult beginning, was full of more blessings than I ever deserved. I was cast out of one town for speaking truth, but that exile led me to a better place, to a man who became my whole world, and to a family that has been my greatest joy. Never be afraid to do what is right, my darlings. The short-term cost may seem high, but the long-term rewards are beyond measure. Live with courage, love with your whole heart, and never forget that sometimes our darkest moments are just the beginning of our brightest chapters." The family buried Lorelei beside Isaac on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree that reminded everyone of the night they had first camped together in the desert. The headstone was simple: Lorelei Oakes Grant, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, and teacher. She spoke truth and built love. Years passed, and the ranch remained in the family, passing from generation to generation. The school grew into a full academy with multiple buildings and a staff of dedicated teachers. Students from across Texas applied for admission, knowing that Grant Academy represented the highest standards of education and ethical teaching. On the 50th anniversary of Isaac and Lorelei's first meeting, the family gathered at the ranch for a reunion. More than 100 people attended, all descendants or connected to the couple whose love story had started with banishment and ended with legacy. They told stories late into the night, remembering the courage and kindness that had defined Isaac and Lorelei's lives. And on that same hill where Isaac and Lorelei rested together, a new generation of children played in the grass, their laughter carrying on the Texas wind. They did not fully understand yet what their great-great-grandparents had built, the courage it had taken, or the obstacles they had overcome. But they would learn, because that was part of the family legacy, the story passed down through generations of how a cowboy rode a banished woman out of town to freedom. And in the process, they found something far more valuable than safety or comfort. They found each other, and they found a love that transcended time and circumstance, a love that built families and schools and ranches, a love that proved that justice and mercy and courage still mattered, still made a difference, still changed the world one brave choice at a time. The sun set over Grant Ranch, painting the sky in brilliant colors, the same sky that had watched over Isaac and Lorelei through every season of their remarkable journey together. And though they were gone, their love remained, woven into every fence post and building, every child who learned to read, every horse that was born and trained, every decision made with integrity and compassion. They had started with nothing but hope and determination, and they had built an empire of love that would endure for generations to come, a testament to the power of courage, the strength of partnership, and the transformative nature of love given freely and completely.